We've talked a lot. You talked a lot about gaps and disparities in funding. I want to transition over to the impact of that when we're not keeping up. So Leslie, I'll bring you into this question, which is the implications of this when we're not meeting our maintenance obligations or maintenance needs over time, and that builds up. So what are some of the most significant implications of deferred maintenance over a long period of time?
Yeah, I mean, deferred maintenance is basically an epidemic in the U.S. in K-12 at this point. I think the report that Anissa mentioned and worked on, talked about the funding gap and the on deferred maintenance of being significant and having grown from, I think, 46 billion a year to now $85 billion a year, and that was 3 years ago. Costs now, it costs $200 more a square foot for construction of new construction or major renovation than it did 5 years ago. And that's due to pandemic, that's due to inflation, due to supply chain issues, pretty significant cost increases, which is causing a lot of this problem. Many districts, what we find is many districts just don't have the staff available to keep up on preventive maintenance. And so the deferred maintenance backlog continues to grow, and that compounds every single year. So it truly has become an epidemic in many places. I've traveled a lot in rural schools, and I spent 3 weeks ago, I visited 6 schools in southeast rural Missouri. And literally, they have to call. They don't have the staff available to actually deal with their more sophisticated systems. One school I was in was a 4-pipe system with older chillers and boilers and pipe leaks. And they literally have to call someone in from St. Louis every time they have a problem. And it's a $5,000 expense for somebody to get into a truck. So these kinds of expenses build up, and schools just, oftentimes are in kind of a run to fail mode. The biggest issue with deferred maintenance is that, every dollar you don't spend on preventative maintenance in the future is likely to cost you $4 in emergency repair. And emergency repair can happen at a time when it's, below zero outside and you need to replace a boiler, and it could cause you to have to shut down schools. Certainly there are ventilation impacts, and Dr. Joe Allen talked about that being the number one indicator in all the schools that I've been in, I believe ventilation is the biggest issue that we actually see. We've been in schools where we've taken CO2 meters into classrooms and it's literally pegged the meter. I mean, it's insane things that you actually see when you're on the ground. So it's a problem. Safety in schools with the potential for things to break down and cause all kinds of problems. And I think that's a significant equity issue. As Anissa mentioned, a lot of the school districts that have more funding are able to staff and hire the people to do preventive maintenance, and they're not chasing their tail all the time. But many districts are just overwhelmed. I think it would be great if we had better data that would allow districts to actually think through and prioritize, build their roadmaps. Larger districts sometimes are able to do this, but oftentimes, and then this is where it starts to get into the environmental aspects of it and the energy aspects. When most people get a facility condition assessment, it's based on like-for-like replacement and RS means cost data, and it's generally not super helpful to help them to put down kind of a roadmap, like what do they need to do next year and what's that true cost going to be? And if they're trying to replace systems with better, more energy efficient systems, that often isn't indicated into that data. So building those roadmaps so people can plan ahead and think about where they want to be 20 years from now is really important, and then figuring out how to fund it, of course.